The Immaculate Misconception, written by Jac Harrison, the Modern Lunatic Blogger. So this is my second blog entry, and by now you should have figured out that I like to have a few drinks and speak my mind, because that's what happens. One of the things I like to do after a few drinks is poke holes in mythology using science and math and all that nonsense, especially when the modern accepted religions have their basis in it. So today I'm going to explain a different point of view of the birth of most modern religions. Before I begin, I just want to put it out there that this is not my personal theory about faith or spirituality, and was in no way written to make anyone question their faith or spirituality. Faith and a person's spirituality is what guides them through this thing we call life. This is just a fun way of understanding what science has told us about these amazing religious stories, and how the organized part of organized religion could be just taking advantage of people by not incorporating what we have learned about us, humans, over the last 250 years in fear of losing their faithful. So let's start at the beginning. In most religions, there is the belief that we, humans, all descended from one biological mother and father at the start of our perceived existence, the Adam and Eve concept. Most organized religions use this as one of the benchmarks of their teachings, but when it was discovered to be true using DNA, it was not recognized by most of the 4,200 religions, including the three big ones: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So what does that mean? Well, let's first understand the study that was done. The Genographic Project, launched by the National Geographic Society and IBM on April 13, 2005, was a genetic anthropology study that mapped historical human migration patterns by collecting and analyzing DNA samples from across the globe, with hopes of finding the origin of mankind using the Y chromosome DNA marker as the reference. You may have taken advantage of their work by tracing your own personal DNA to learn where your ancestors originally came from. What they found was traceable Y chromosome DNA mutations at different points in our genetic history known as markers. And to save you from boredom, I'll sum it up and drop a few links at the bottom of this article so you can read more about it if you wish. But they were able to lump all of humankind into what they called super ancestors, labeled as mutations. First there was M9, then M168. This accounted for 3 billion living men's Y chromosome DNA at the time of the study, and finally scientific Adam. Every living human was able to be traced back to this one fella. He must have been one busy guy. Now that should have been super exciting for the religious community, since it proves that their Adam and Eve were real after all. Well, at least Adam. And it was proven by an incalculable amount in their favor, but they didn't yell it from the roof of their holy temples. And the reason why may shock you. As most people know, we are able to carbon date human remains, and we can put together a timeline of human existence using facts. So when the DNA from scientific Adam came back as 50,000 years old, it kind of messed with their message and timeline. And God does not like that. But what does this really mean? Well, that's simple if you look at what was going on 50,000 years ago. We now know that 75,000 years ago, the Tobo supervolcano erupted and forced our planet into a moderately sized ice age, leaving only a few places on the planet habitable for about 25,000 years. In other words, only a few tribes in tropical regions would have been able to survive during this period of time, unless they possessed the technology to control indoor living conditions. So by using this understanding, scientific Adam must have been the alpha male in his tribe with the most descendants. And 25,000 years after the Tobo supervolcano event, his DNA made up the majority of human beings left on the planet. This tribe can be traced back today to the Zulu Bushman tribe out of South Africa. Their click language is what some linguists say to be the most complex language on the planet, with over 100 different sounds to English's 30, making it not only believed to be one of the oldest languages known to man to date, but the clicks are thought to be the language used by scientific Adam himself. Now that we have the who really was Adam thing out of the way, we now need to introduce free-thinking advanced beings into the picture that will bring knowledge and new thinking to the survivors of the Ice Age. A religious prophet, if you will. I'm going to bridge this gap using the theory that all monarchies used when forming their kingdoms, that they were a higher level of species because their bloodline is that of the gods. Now, up until the 20th century, this claim to greatness or godliness on a genetic level was taken at the word of the monarchy. But with modern technology, we could see a clear bloodline for all European and African monarchies using the RH factor. For conspiracy theorists out there, you will enjoy this. You know that book good old Uncle Darwin wrote that talked about how we, humans, evolved from monkeys? Well, I do. And this is what he was talking about. There is only a 2% difference between our DNA as humans and the rhesus macaque monkey. The rhesus macaques monkey is also where we are able to identify the Rh factor from, and is believed to be where we started as a species. Scientific Adam's living descendants genetically carried the red blood cell protein known today as Rh-positive blood, where the Basque people do not have this protein, and there is no known origin for Rh-negative blood. Because of this, Rh-negative people should not technically exist based on our current knowledge of human evolution, but they do. So we now have scientific Adam's living descendants roaming the earth, doing caveman stuff with things, and we could fast forward in time to where there are people living on every continent, and we're growing as a species. During the process of evolution, scientific Adam's living descendants make up the majority of the planet, and one would think that they are the only human species roaming the earth due to the harsh conditions for the last 25,000 years, but recent scientific study would disagree. For example, the oldest natural mummy in the world was not exhumed in Egypt, dating from 3000 BCE, but in the Atacama Desert in Chile from 7020 BCE. Besides that being a fun fact, what does that really tell us? Well, it tells us that modern humans have been around for at least 2,000 years longer than we originally thought, and while that's not an extremely long time on the evolutionary scale, it is long enough to have a completely different socioeconomic way of life within that community. Hell, 2,000 years ago we thought that the world was flat, and let's just say that we still had some growing to do as a species, to say the least. Let's think about this for a minute. The Basque people were living their lives in a somewhat advanced civilization in relation to the living descendants of scientific Adam without the awareness of any other humans living on the planet, and then all of a sudden they encounter each other. For me, the $32,000 question is, what happened when they met? Well, I think it's as clear as day what we would do in a similar situation today. It's what we've always done. Start a war, take their land, enslave them, brainwash them into believing that we are a higher power, as in a god for this example. Use them for sex and lay down the law. A law with many rules like the ones you might find in the 4,200 different religious texts that are currently in print. Hell, I would even toss in a few miracles, like a flashlight or a mirror, to really cement their newfound belief. With that said, who wouldn't take the odds that this is what happened? I would, because the proof is in our DNA. The Basque people had to have hid the salami with scientific Adam's living descendants. And we know this because we, humans, are genetically altered versions of scientific Adam's living descendants and the Basque people combined. DNA don't lie. Just ask Maury. Now, doesn't that sound like human behavior anyway, besides all the silly facts and science and stuff? Yes, of course it does. It also sounds a lot like the Sumerians' encounter with the Anunnaki from around 7500 BCE to 5000 BCE. And you can still see this behavior today in some regions of our world. It just always ends in war now. So this theory is that the monarchy was just an older, more advanced version of humans that were a complete genetic match to scientific Adam's living descendants, with the only difference being the Rh factor, allowing us to piece together this puzzle using DNA. Rh-negative blood accounts for less than 15% of the world's population today and is still found in the most high-ranking members of a monarchy. With that said, how about some more fun facts about blood? O-Rh-negative blood is the rarest on the planet, queen's blood, while O-Rh-positive blood is the most common man's blood, with all other blood types being a genetic mutation of one or the other. Boy, doesn't this explain a lot about our history? Wouldn't it be something if the Vatican has proof of a separate human bloodline that was formed by evolution just from another animal that lacks the red blood cell protein known as the Rh factor from a much earlier time in our recorded history, and then locked it away in their private library? Now you can call this all a coincidence or not, but this is what science and genealogy have proven. It's up to us to decide what we believe. All I know is that I'm more inclined to take things for what they are, and in this case, I see a historical event of genocide that was recorded as a gift of life by the captors, or as we call them today, royalty. Now, if you really want to toss the proverbial wrench into the mix, let's add some ancient philosophy. Keep in mind this part cannot be scientifically proven as of today to 100% certainty, but it sure is fun to link this event up to the above theory, and it puts the frosting on the cake for me. Plato, not the stuff you ate as a child, the philosopher, spoke of an advanced civilization that was lost to the sea at around 9000 BCE that many believe to have been in what we refer to today as Bimini. During the last ice age, this area would have been one of the last to experience the effect of climate change at around 45,000 years ago, making it a habitable island during the climate change, and then resubmerging as the ice caps melted at around 11,000 years ago or 9000 BCE. Who's to say that the legend of Atlantis was not the origin of the Basque people? I mean, it makes sense logically. Let's look at this using a migration exit strategy that we would use today under similar conditions. The polar ice caps had started to melt at an alarming rate, and the island the Basque people were living on was constantly flooding. What would we do? Well, that's simple. We would get in a boat and head to higher ground, like the country of Basque, that is 5,089 feet above current sea level, but may have been a short hike from the coastline at the time of their arrival. You can see that geographically the country of Basque would have been an excellent place for anyone surviving a great flood, while South Africa would have not been affected. There is also a direct migration path from the country of Basque to South Africa, making the discovery of each other inevitable, giving rise to modern humans. Guess who has 2 thumbs and just debunked the birth of most modern religions in fewer than 2,100 words? This guy. That's who. Eat your heart out, Dan Brown. Eat your heart out. If you took offense to this article, please tell me in the comments section below. Do you have a topic you'd like me to blog about? Please email me at modernlunatic@gmail.com.